Okay, now that I've completed the length of the bracelet, I am going to now add my button for the closure. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it on here and see where about that I'm going to need it. So I'm going to bring my thread down. I'm just going to run it through, and it will be a little tight now to run back through these once you've gone through them a couple of times after adding on your thread. So I have you but just work it through. I'm going to work it into the middle of this bracelet, so I'm going to go through this bugle, come out here. And then I'm going to just kind of zigzag down a couple of rows until I get to where I am pleased with the button placement. And all you're really going to do is just sew this button on, and I want it to be near the end, so that's about right. I'm just going to run my thread up through the button and just back down. And I'm going to bring it through this this bead again to get it pulled into position. I'm going to come up through the button, and basically what I'm going to do is just sew it through the bracelet. I'm not going to stitch it back through any more beads. I'm just going to sew it, but I want to make sure that it catches and that my threads are concealed. And I'm just going to run it up and down a couple of times, so you just want to make sure you get it through. And do this till you feel secure that it is secure, because this is what your bead loop's going to be on to keep your bracelet. And this is on the bottom, so it's not going to be seen. And then you'll run the thread back through the beadwork and make a couple of half hitch notches, and then we'll work on the loop. Now that I've made several passes, I feel that it's nice and tight, and I'm going to go ahead and tie my thread off. Okay, now we're going to create the loop for the button, and I'm going to string on several seed beads, and then I'm just going to kind of test the loop and see how it is. What I've done is I've removed the stop bead from that tail end that we started with, just pulled it off, and then now I rethreaded my needle, and I'm stringing on some beads too. And this, I've got 12 on here, and I know it's obviously going to take more than 12. You want it to kind of bridge over to the end here with the loop. I want it to come over like this. So now what I'm going to do, just to test it, is I'm just going to slip my needle through here, that end bead, just to see how it's going to fit. And I think I'll probably need just a few more, because it really doesn't fit that well. You want it to be tight, but you don't want it to be so tight you can't get it on. So now I'm just going to slip my needle back out of that bead and add a few more. Okay, and I'm going to slip it back through here and test it again. So that's obviously a much bigger loop. And I think that would be a sufficient amount. And that was probably about 24 beads, give or take. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to continue to run this back through some beads here, and of course do a couple of half hitch notches. Half hitch knots. I'm going to run it through this whole top line before I knot. And I'm going to half hitch knot back in this second row. And then we'll be able to trim our wire, and you've completed your bracelet. And this is why it's important to keep plenty of tail when you start the bracelet, because I'm using this thread as a working end and need it to be long enough to be able to work with, so you don't have to tie in a new thread just to finish it. Trim. And now you've completed your bracelet.